The last broadcast of Kestrel Point, on nights when the sea fog rolls in over Kestrel Point, a strange radio frequency wakes up. A calm but tired voice reads numbers. Somewhere in the background, a bell chimes, and if you answer that voice, someone in town disappears. I never believed the stories until a box of old cassette tapes arrived at my door. There was no return address, only my name in block letters and a postal mark from a place I had never heard of, Kestrel. Inside the box were 12 tapes, a folded map of the coast, and a sticky note that said, "Play in order. Don't speak when the bell rings." The map showed a crooked coastline shaped like a hook. At the very tip, someone had written Kestrel Point Light in black ink. The word light was underlined twice, then crossed out. I took the first tape and placed it into my old cassette player. Static filled the room. Then a man's voice began to speak. Keeper's log, March 3rd. Fog setting in, beacon still offline. But the radio is alive again. He paused. I could hear seagulls somewhere far away. The voice came back at 2:16 this morning. Same sequence, same warning. Then he read out 5 numbers, slowly, carefully. 7, 11, 1, 4, 0. After that, the tape went silent except for a faint bell that chimed 5 times. Remembering the note, I did not speak. The next tape told me more. Kestrel Point lighthouse hadn't shown any light for years. The town claimed the beacon failed, and there was no money to repair it. But the keeper remained because the radio still worked. He said the town pretended the lighthouse was abandoned, but they still left bread at his door and kept the radio powered. In the background of the recording, I heard his footsteps on wooden stairs and the creak of heavy doors. He described an old clock that had once stood inside the tower, a brass clock that rang the hours. It was removed years ago, yet he still heard its chimes in the fog. As if to prove his point, the bell rang faintly while he was speaking. He whispered, "The bell is not in the room. The bell is in the fog." By the third tape, the keeper was keeping a precise log. 1:03 a.m. numbers, 1:07 bell. 1:12 my radio replies by itself. I rewound to make sure I had heard that right. His radio replying on its own. There was a sharp click, a burst of static, and then a voice his own saying, "I'm here." The next tapes were worse. He began talking about something asking him questions over the air. A low, distorted voice that would say, "Are you there?" He insisted he never answered, but the radio still sent replies in his voice. Sometimes after the reply, the bell would chime, always 5 times. On a corner of the map, he had written 5 names in pencil. Each one was crossed out. I found loose sheets of paper folded under the tapes. They were journal entries in the same handwriting. One read, March 10th. The sea is loud tonight. Set frequency to 512 kilohertz. It changes to that by itself when the fog is heavy. The boy from the bakery delivered bread but kept his eyes on the ground, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as he walked away. Another entry said March 11th. The numbers changed. Now 6 digits. The last 2 are coordinates pointing to the cliff path. One tape followed his footsteps along a gravel path in the rain. He stopped and scraped away moss from a brass plate. It read, "Kestrel Point Light, mechanism removed." Beneath that, scratched by hand, were the words, "Bell remains." I tried to contact the town. When I called the office, someone picked up the phone but said nothing. Then they set the receiver down without hanging up. I drove to Kestrel. The town was quiet. The bakery was open, the same boy at the counter, still counting loaves and 5s. I asked him if the lighthouse still had a bell. He didn't answer. He just whispered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 under his breath. On a bulletin board, I saw 5 old photographs. No captions, no dates, just faces. 2 men, 2 women, 1 child. A bell chimed twice from nowhere. The boy turned on a radio behind the counter. It tuned itself to 512 kilohertz. A voice read 7111402, 6 digits now. The boy shook his head and said, "Don't answer. When you answer, it takes the answer." I asked who told him that. The bell chimed once, and he replied, "Everyone." That night in my motel, I played another tape. The keeper's voice was hoarse. I heard myself answer, he said, but I didn't speak. In the morning, the boy from the bakery was gone. Later tapes revealed the keeper's theories. First, that it was a secret number station disguised as a lighthouse broadcast, used by smugglers or spies. Second, that it was an echo that learned to speak and needed human voices to survive. Third, that the town had made a bargain. Every so often, the bell would take 5 people, and the rest would be spared. The keeper called himself not a keeper of light, but a keeper of rules. The last tape was marked in red pen. "Do not play in fog." I should have waited for a clear night, but I pressed play. The keeper spoke in a shaking voice. It's early, but the voice came anyway. 7 numbers this time. The last 2 pointed to the very motel where I was sitting. The bell chimed 5 times, then a 6th, then a 7th. The keeper whispered, "I won't answer." Then I heard his own voice answer, calm and certain, "I'm here." He described seeing the bell floating in the air where the lighthouse lens had once been, made of fog with faces appearing inside it like coins under milk. One of the faces spoke, "Don't." The tape warped. The bell rang one last time. The final sound was a phone hanging up, and then, in my own room, 7 bell chimes that were not on the tape at all. I mailed the box back to myself, hoping it would never arrive again. If you are ever on a foggy coast and hear a bell counting to 5, then 6, then 7, do not answer.